A poor, kind-hearted girl cooks alone at the stove for her ailing mother, but just outside her broken window, a hidden billionaire is watching her, and what he's about to do will leave everyone speechless. Lily Carter stirred the little food left in the pot, stretching it carefully, but it wasn't enough to last the night. "Is it ready?" her mother whispered weakly. Lily turned with a gentle smile. "Yes." Another lie. There was barely anything left in the house. No money. No one to help. But still, she cooked. Outside, the man watching looked like a nobody. But he was a billionaire, a man who had seen greed, lies, and betrayal. But never a kindness like this. And what Lily did just hours ago made him stop. Made him stay. Made him decide. But why is a hidden billionaire watching a poor girl? How is she still cooking when there's almost nothing left? What did she do that changed everything? And what will he do next that will leave everyone speechless? The pot had been boiling longer than it should. Lily kept stirring anyway, careful not to scrape the bottom too hard. The rice was thinning, breaking apart into the water, stretching itself into something it was never meant to be. The smell wasn't rich, but she breathed it in like it was. Behind her, the old wooden bed creaked softly. "Lily," her mother called again, weaker this time. "Come closer." Lily lowered the spoon and quickly wiped her hands on her faded skirt before walking over. Grace Carter looked smaller than she used to. Illness had taken more than her strength, it had taken the fullness of her face, the brightness in her eyes. But not her awareness. "You didn't buy enough," Grace said quietly, studying her daughter. Lily shook her head gently. "It's enough, Mom. You'll eat first." Grace reached out, her fingers trembling, and held Lily's wrist. "You always say that." Lily smiled, but her eyes dropped. Because it was true. There was a time this house didn't feel this empty. Not rich, but stable. Not full of luxury, but full of life. Years ago, this same kitchen had been louder. Warmer. Filled with voices that overlapped each other. Her father's voice used to carry the most. "Balance is not just for numbers," Daniel Carter would say, adjusting his glasses at the small dining table. "It's for life. What you take, you must be able to justify." He was an accountant, meticulous, respected, known for refusing shortcuts even when others took them freely. His income wasn't large, but it was clean. Enough to keep food on the table, uniforms pressed, and books paid for. Grace complimented him in a different way. Where Daniel was precise, Grace was patient. "Character is built in small choices," she would often tell her children while serving food. Not big moments. Back then, there was always enough food. Not plenty. But enough. 3 children filled that space. Sophia, the firstborn, had always been restless. Even as a child, she noticed what others had that she didn't. Better shoes. Bigger houses. Softer leaves. "This isn't enough," she once muttered under her breath at age 14, thinking no one heard. But Lily had. Ethan, the middle child, was quieter, but not deeper. He watched people, not principles. He admired success, but not always the path that led to it. "Dad works too hard for too little," he once told a friend outside the house, unaware Lily stood behind the door. Only Lily absorbed everything differently. She didn't just hear her parents. She believed them. Back in the present, the fire crackled softly. Lily returned to the stove and stirred again, slower this time. Her movement carried something learned, not taught in words, but in years of watching her mother serve first, eat last. Grace's cough broke the silence again. "Where are your brother and sister?" she asked faintly. Lily paused. "They're busy," she said. Grace closed her eyes. Not because she believed it, but because she didn't want to argue with reality. Outside, the man shifted slightly, still hidden in shadow. His eyes didn't just watch. They recognized patterns. Sacrifice. Restraint. Truth hidden behind soft lies. He had seen many families. Wealthy ones. Powerful ones. Broken ones. But this was something else. And as Lily lifted the spoon again, carefully blowing on it before tasting, he remembered exactly what she had done earlier that day. And why he hadn't walked away. The next morning didn't come with hope. It came with silence. The kind that settles into a house long before anyone speaks. Lily was already awake before the sun rose, sitting beside her mother's bed, adjusting the thin blanket over her chest. Grace's breathing had become uneven during the night, soft, then strained, then soft again. Lily had learned to listen to those rhythms the way others listened to music. "Mom," she whispered gently. "I'll be back soon. I need to get medicine." Grace didn't respond immediately. Then her fingers moved slightly, brushing against Lily's hand. "Don't go too far," she murmured. "And don't give everything away again." Lily froze. For a moment, she wondered, did she know? But Grace's eyes were still closed. Lily forced a soft smile. "I won't." Another lie. Outside, the air was cool, carrying the faint noise of a waking neighborhood. Lily walked quickly, her steps light but purposeful. In her hand was a small folded note, the last prescription the clinic had given weeks ago. She hadn't been able to afford it. Not then. Maybe not now. As she walked, memories followed her, not gently, but sharply. Her father's last week had not been normal. It started with silence. Daniel Carter, the man who used to explain everything, suddenly explained nothing. He would come home late, sit quietly, and stare at papers longer than necessary. His glasses would slip slightly down his nose, but he wouldn't adjust them like he always did. One night, Lily had walked into the room quietly and seen numbers spread across the table, columns that didn't align, accounts that didn't match. "Dad," she had asked. He looked up too quickly. Then forced a smile. "Just walk." But Lily had seen something she didn't understand then. Fear. Days later, the black SUV appeared. At first, it was just parked at the corner. Then closer. Then across the street. Always still. Always watching. Ethan noticed it once while stepping outside. "Why does that car keep coming here?" he asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. Then he said, too casually, "Probably just someone visiting nearby." But he had locked the door that night. Twice. Back in the present, Lily slowed as she reached the small roadside stall where medicines were sold. The pharmacist looked at her, then at the paper in her hand. "How much do you have?" he asked. Lily hesitated, then opened her palm. "A few coins." "Not enough." The man sighed. "This won't cover it." Lily nodded slowly, already expecting that answer. "Okay, thank you," she said quietly, turning away. She didn't go home immediately. Instead, she walked further down the road. Because she knew there was still one thing she could do. One last option. The memory hit again. The night before her father died. He had called Grace into the room, his voice low but urgent. "If anything happens to me," he started. Grace shook her head immediately. "Don't say that." But he continued. "There are things you don't know. Things I found at work. If I speak, it could destroy people, powerful people." Grace's face had gone pale. "Then don't speak," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, then at his children in the next room. "I can't ignore it." The next morning. He never came back. Lily stopped walking. Her chest tightened slightly, but she pushed the feeling down. She couldn't afford to break. Not now. Ahead of her, under a tree near the roadside, sat the same old man from yesterday. Still. Quiet. Watching the world pass him by like he didn't belong to it. Lily slowed. Her fingers tightened slightly around the small cloth purse in her hand. Inside it was the last money she had. Behind tired eyes, a thought formed. A familiar one. The same one her mother had warned her about just minutes ago. And for a moment, Lily hesitated. Lily stood still for a moment, her eyes fixed on the old man under the tree. He hadn't moved. Hadn't asked. Hadn't even looked up this time. But something about him felt familiar. Not his face. Not his clothes. But the quiet way he sat, like someone who had learned not to expect anything from the world anymore. Lily slowly opened her small purse again. The coins inside clinked softly. Not enough for medicine. Barely enough for food. Definitely not enough for both. She closed her eyes briefly. And in that silence, a memory surfaced. Her father's voice. Clear. Steady. If you only do good when it's easy, then it's not really good. Another voice followed. Her mother's. God sees what people don't. Lily exhaled slowly. Then walked toward the man. Sir, she said gently. The man looked up this time. His eyes met hers, not weak, not lost, but sharp in a way that didn't match the rest of him. Still, his voice came out soft. Yes. Have you eaten today? A pause. Then a simple answer. No. Behind those eyes, something shifted. Not visibly. But internally. Because this wasn't the first time someone had asked him that question. But it was the first time it sounded like this. Without pity. Without performance. Without expectation. Lily nodded once, as if confirming something to herself. Wait here, she said. Minutes later, she returned. In her hand. A small bag of food. Rice. Bread. A little soup. Everything she had just managed to buy. She held it out to him. You can have this. The man didn't take it immediately. Instead, he studied her face. Carefully. You need this more than I do, he said. Lily shook her head softly. I'll be fine. A lie. But not the kind that protects herself. The kind that protects someone else. Why? The man asked quietly. Why would you give this away? Lily hesitated. Then smiled faintly. My mom says, when you help someone, you don't lose anything. You gain something you can't see. Silence. The kind that stretches just long enough to matter. The man finally took the food. Slowly. Deliberately. As if accepting more than just a meal. Thank you, he said. Lily nodded. Then turned and walked away. Without looking back. But the man watched her go. Every step. Every movement. Every quiet strength she carried. Because what she didn't know was that he wasn't just an old man. He was Alexander Reed. A billionaire. A man who had spent years studying people, testing them, measuring their worth not by words, but by actions. And Lily had just done something most wealthy men he knew would never do. She gave when she had nothing. Alexander looked down at the food in his hands. Then back at her fading figure. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like observing anymore. He felt something else. Responsibility. But not yet. Not immediately. Because one act of kindness could be coincidence. He needed to be sure. So instead of leaving, he stood up slowly. And followed her. Not as a billionaire. But as a witness. Because something told him that this girl's story didn't start here. And whatever he was about to uncover would not be simple. Lily didn't notice she was being followed. She walked fast, but not hurried, her steps trained by necessity, not fear. The small bag of medicine she had finally managed to buy was clutched tightly in her hand like it could disappear if she loosened her grip. Behind her, Alexander Reed kept distance. Not too close. Not too far. A man used to boardrooms now walking through dust and narrow streets, unnoticed. To anyone else, he was just another struggling figure in a worn coat. But his eyes never stopped studying her. Every pause she made at the roadside. Every glance back toward the direction she had come from. Every slight adjustment of the bag as if protecting something more precious than food. Lily turned into a narrow path between old buildings. This was where her world began. The houses here were tired, paint peeling, roofs patched with metal sheets, electricity unstable. Yet there was life in them. Voices. Movement. Survival. Alexander slowed slightly as he followed. He had seen poverty before. But this was different. This wasn't just luck. This was endurance. They reached a small wooden structure at the far end of the lane. The door creaked when Lily pushed it open. "Mom, I'm back," she called softly. Inside, Grace Carter was sitting up slightly, struggling against weakness. The moment she saw Lily, her eyes softened, but then immediately sharpened when she noticed the medicine bag. "You got it?" she asked. Lily nodded quickly. "Yes." Another lie. Because it still wasn't enough for full treatment. But it was something. Alexander stood outside the broken window. Still unseen. And for the first time, he saw her clearly, not just as a giver, but as someone carrying weight far too heavy for her age. Inside, Lily helped her mother sit upright, carefully placing the medicine aside as if it were gold. Grace watched her closely. "You're not telling me everything," she said quietly. Lily paused. A flash of hesitation crossed her face. Then she smiled again. "I'm fine, Mom." But Grace didn't respond immediately. Instead, her gaze drifted toward the small table. There was barely anything on it. Just a cup. A broken plate. And a faded photograph. Alexander's eyes followed her gaze. And what he saw made him pause. A framed picture. A younger Daniel Carter standing beside Grace and 3 children. Sophia, Ethan, and Lily. A memory surfaced immediately in Alexander's mind. Daniel Carter. The accountant. The file he once ignored. The whistleblower who had tried to expose financial corruption inside one of Alexander's old partnered firms. A man who died before his evidence could surface. Alexander's expression tightened slightly. He had thought that case was buried. But now, it was living inside this house. Inside, Grace coughed suddenly. Lily rushed to her side immediately, supporting her shoulders. "Mom, please rest." Grace shook her head weakly. "I raised you 3, but I don't understand where I went wrong." Lily's eyes flickered. A silence followed that said more than words. Flashback, brief, layered foreshadowing. Years ago, after Daniel's death, Sophia had stood in this same room, staring at the empty table. "I can't live like this," she had said sharply. Ethan had followed soon after. "I send money when I can," he promised, but never did. And Lily. She had stayed. Not because she had to, but because she couldn't leave the only person who still called her name with love back in the present. Lily adjusted the blanket over her mother. "We are okay," she whispered. But outside, Alexander had already seen enough to know they weren't. Not even close. He stepped back slightly into the shadows. His mind no longer observing. Now calculating. Because this wasn't random suffering. This was connected. To corruption. To silence. To something buried. And Lily. She was at the center of it without even knowing. As he turned to leave, his eyes lingered one last time through the broken window. On Lily. Still caring. Still giving. Still protecting a world that had given her nothing in return. And that was when he made his decision. Not a test anymore. Something deeper. Something irreversible. He would not just watch her. He would understand everything that destroyed her life. And when he was done, the world would not remain the same. Inside the quiet penthouse across the city, Alexander Reed finally removed the worn coat he had been using as disguise. The room was silent except for the low hum of city lights far below. Glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, showing a skyline that belonged to power, his power. But tonight, he wasn't looking at wealth. He was looking at a name. Daniel Carter. The file lay open on the table in front of him. Old. Nearly buried. Nearly forgotten. But not gone. Alexander's fingers tapped once against the desk as he reread the report summary. Accountant. Internal auditor. Whistleblower suspicion. Sudden death classified as accident. Case closed too quickly. Too clean. Too convenient. He leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. Something didn't sit right. Not because death was unusual in business conflicts, but because silence followed it too perfectly. Bring me everything, he said into the phone. His assistant responded immediately. Sir, that case was archived years ago. Most documents were sealed under corporate settlement clauses. Alexander's voice dropped. I didn't ask what is available. I said bring everything. A pause. Yes, sir. As the call ended, Alexander stood slowly and walked toward the window. The city below looked calm. But he knew better. Calm cities often hid the deepest corruption. Years ago, Alexander had built his empire through aggressive mergers. One of his earliest partnerships had involved a construction finance conglomerate, one that suddenly collapsed its accounting division after internal restructuring. At the time, he had not questioned it. Now, the timing felt wrong. Because Daniel Carter had worked in exactly that division. Back in the present, a new file arrived. Alexander opened it immediately. Bank logs. Email fragments. Deleted audit trails. And then a flagged transaction chain. Hidden offshore accounts. Layered transfers. Fake compliance reports. His expression hardened. This wasn't just corruption, he muttered. This was a system. He traced the final link. And stopped. Because the final name on the chain belonged to someone still active in the industry. Someone powerful. Someone still respected. Someone who had been sitting in boardrooms even while evidence was being erased. Alexander closed the file slowly. So this is what you died for. Daniel Carter. Not an accident. A removal. A knock came at the door. His head turned slightly. Come in. His senior investigator entered. We found something else, sir. He placed another folder on the table. This connects to a family. The Carter family. Wife and 3 children. Alexander opened it. And for the first time, he saw Lily's name properly documented. Not just as a daughter, but as someone who had remained. Who had survived. Who had carried everything left behind. He paused. Something subtle shifted in his expression. Because this wasn't just about justice anymore. This was about consequence. He closed the folder slowly. Track the children, he said calmly. The investigator hesitated. All of them, sir. Alexander didn't look up. All of them. A pause. But prioritized the youngest. He already knew why. Even without fully admitting it yet. Lily's face. The way she had given away food without asking for anything. The way she had smiled while lying about having eaten. The way she had stood in front of hunger and chosen kindness anyway. Back in the penthouse, Alexander exhaled slowly. For years, he had tested people to see if they were worth trusting. But Lily. She had not been tested. She had revealed herself. And that was more dangerous. Because people like her change decisions. Change systems. Change men like him. His phone buzzed again. A message arrived. We located the surviving family members. 2 are no longer in contact. 1 is still in the same residence. Alexander already knew who that one was. He looked out at the city again. Then spoke quietly, almost to himself. You didn't just survive your father's death. You inherited his truth. And somewhere far away, Lily was still unaware that the past she lived with every day was about to collide with the most powerful man she had ever unknowingly changed. The next morning came with the same heaviness in Lily's world. Same cracked walls. Same weak morning light slipping through broken wood. Same silence that felt louder than sound. But something was different. Grace Carter's breathing had worsened overnight. Lily sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "Mom, stay with me," she whispered. Grace's eyes fluttered open slowly. "You should rest too," she said faintly. Lily shook her head immediately. "I am fine." A pause. Then Grace spoke softly, almost like she was remembering something far away. "Your father used to say that too?" Lily went still. Flashback, soft, emotional layering. Daniel Carter sitting at the same bed years ago, laughing quietly as his children argued over small things. "You kids think life is easy," he had said with a smile. "But one day, you'll understand, integrity is expensive." Sophia had rolled her eyes back then. Ethan had ignored him. But Lily had listened. Always listening. Back in the present, Lily gently adjusted the blanket over her mother. She stood up. "I get food," she said quietly. Grace tried to stop her. "We still have." But Lily had already stepped outside. Across the city, Alexander Reed sat in his car for the first time without disguise. But he didn't look like a billionaire right now. He looked like a man watching something unfold too slowly for his liking. Through the dashboard screen, live updates from his team appeared. Lily Carter's location. Her routine. Her struggles. Every detail carefully mapped. His investigator spoke beside him. "She's been skipping meals for days. Most of what she earns goes directly to her mother's medication attempts." Alexander didn't respond immediately. He was watching a video clip. Lily, at a roadside store, counting coins. Then quietly walking away when she realized it wasn't enough. No anger. No complaint. Just acceptance. He closed the screen slowly. "This is not Survivor," he said quietly. The investigator glanced at him. "What is it then, sir?" Alexander's eyes stayed fixed ahead. Endurance, without protection. Flashback, deep foreshadowing connection. He remembered Daniel Carter again. A man who also refused shortcuts. A man who also believed truth would protect itself. A man who had been wrong. Back in the present, Alexander gave a quiet instruction. "Send medical support to her mother's clinic." The investigator hesitated. "Directly." Alexander nodded. "But do not attach my name." A pause. "And ensure it looks accidental." Meanwhile, Lily returned home later than expected. But something was different. The clinic had suddenly accepted her mother's treatment. No rejection. No delay. Just approval. Lily stood frozen at the counter. "Are you sure?" she asked. The nurse nodded. "Everything is covered." Lily blinked slowly. "Covered by who?" The nurse checked the file again. "I don't know. It came through this morning." Lily walked home slowly that day. Confusion sitting quietly in her chest. Because life had never suddenly become easier before. Never. And from a distance, Alexander watched again. Not revealing himself. Not speaking. Just observing. Because now he knew something important. Lily did not just survive hardship. She moved through it without changing who she was. And that was rare enough to protect. That night, as Lily sat beside her sleeping mother, she whispered softly into the silence. "I don't know who is helping us, but thank you." And for the first time, Alexander Reed felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. Not control. Not strategy. Not analysis. Something closer to responsibility. Lily didn't expect the knock on the door. It was late afternoon. The kind of fading light that made everything inside the small house look softer than it really was. Grace was resting, finally stable after the sudden approval of treatment Lily still couldn't explain. Lily opened the door slowly. Sophia at 16, standing in the same room, holding a school acceptance letter. "I'm leaving for the city," she had said excitedly. Grace had smiled proudly. But Lily had quietly asked, "Will you come back?" Sophia hadn't answered then. Back in the present, Ethan finally stepped forward. "I didn't know things were this bad," he said quietly, looking at Grace. Lily looked at him sharply. "You never asked." Silence. Sophia turned suddenly. "I didn't come here for guilt trips," she said. "I came because I heard Mom was sick." Grace tried to sit up. "I'm fine, just weak." Sophia nodded slowly, but her eyes drifted again around the house. "And Dad's gone. And this is what's left." Lily's voice dropped slightly. "This is what I have been holding together." Sophia met her gaze. "For how long?" Lily didn't answer. Because the number didn't matter anymore. Ethan looked at Lily differently now. Not judgment. Not admiration. Something heavier. Recognition of effort he had ignored for years. "You've been taking care of everything alone?" he asked. Lily nodded. "Someone had to." A silence followed. Not peaceful. Heavy. Unresolved. Outside, a car passed slowly. Unnoticed by the siblings. But not by someone else. From a distance down the street, Alexander Reed watched the interaction unfold through a discreet device feed his team had set up. He didn't interfere. Not yet. But his expression tightened slightly as he observed Sophia's tone. And Ethan's hesitation. And Lily's quiet endurance. Daniel Carter had once warned his children. Life will test what kind of people you become when things fall apart. Back then, no one believed him. Now, the test had already been passed. By only one of them. Inside the house, Sophia finally sighed. "I'm not staying long," she said. Lily nodded once. She had already expected that. But before Sophia could leave, Grace spoke softly. "Don't forget where you came from." Sophia paused at the door. For a second, something flickered in her expression. But it was gone quickly. "I haven't," she said. Then she left. Ethan lingered a moment longer. He looked at Lily. "I should have done more," he said quietly. Lily didn't respond. Because apologies didn't change empty days. When they were gone, the house became silent again. But not empty. Because something had shifted. Not in walls. In truth. And far away, Alexander lowered the screen slowly. Now he understood something clearer. Lily wasn't just surviving alone. She was the foundation everyone else had left behind. And that made her story far more important than he initially believed. Lily didn't sleep that night. Not because she couldn't. But because something about Sophia and Ethan's visit had reopened a silence she had learned to live with. Grace was finally resting properly for the first time in days, the new medication quietly doing what years of struggle had failed to achieve. Lily sat beside her mother's bed, watching her breathe, slow, steady, fragile but stable. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe things might finally be changing. But then, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello." A woman's voice came through, calm and professional. "Miss Carter, your mother's full treatment plan has been approved for continuation. All payments have been settled for the next cycle." Lily froze. "I didn't pay anything." A pause on the other end. "It has already been handled." The call ended. Just like that. Lily sat still. Her mind tried to make sense of it, but there was no explanation that fit. No relatives. No savings. No help. Yet somehow, everything was being covered. Outside the house, the street was quiet. But not empty. A black car stood further down the road. Unmarked. Still. Inside it, Alexander Reed watched without expression. His assistant's voice came through the earpiece. She received a confirmation. No suspicion yet, but she's confused. Alexander didn't respond immediately. Because now it wasn't just history. It was present. And it was close enough to touch Lily's life. He looked once more at the small house in the distance. At the girl inside who still believed she was alone. Then he spoke quietly. Increase protection. The assistant hesitated. From what level, sir? Alexander's voice dropped. From everything she doesn't see yet. And for the first time, he wasn't just watching her anymore. He was positioning himself between her and a truth that had already destroyed her father. The night air felt heavier than usual. Lily noticed it even before she stepped outside. There was no reason for her to be out so late, but Grace had developed a sudden fever again, and the clinic had asked her to come pick up an emergency prescription that should already be covered. That word, covered, still confused her. Because nothing in her life had ever been covered before. She walked quickly down the dim road, holding her mother's hospital card tightly. But halfway there, she stopped. A black SUV was parked ahead. Engine running. Lights off. Still. Something in her chest tightened immediately. She had seen that kind of stillness before. Years ago. Her father, Daniel Carter, once pulled her aside after noticing the same kind of vehicle near their home. If anything ever feels wrong, he had said quietly, don't ignore it. Even silence can be a warning. Lily had laughed then. Ignore what, Dad? A parked car. Daniel hadn't smiled back. That's how people survive things they don't understand. Back in the present, Lily slowly changed direction. But the SUV moved too. Cutting off her path. Not fast. Not aggressive. Controlled. Intentional. Two men stepped out. Not uniformed. Not police. But their posture said enough. They were used to being obeyed. Miss Carter, one of them called. Lily stepped back slightly. I think you have the wrong person. The second man smiled faintly. No. We don't. Inside the SUV, a folder was briefly visible. Her father's name was printed on it. Daniel Carter. Lily's breathing changed instantly. What do you want from me? She asked, voice lower now. The first man tilted his head. Nothing from you. From your father's past. A pause. People like him leave unfinished problems. Lily's grip tightened. My father is dead. The man nodded. That doesn't stop consequences. At that moment, headlights appeared behind them. Bright. Sudden. The SUV's door shut immediately. The men stepped back without urgency, but with alertness. A second car pulled in between them. Black. Clean. Silent. The door opened. Alexander Reed stepped out. But this time, he wasn't disguised. No old clothes. No bending posture. Just presence. Authority. Stillness that made the air feel different. The man in front of Lily changed immediately. Recognition flickered. Not fear. Respect mixed with uncertainty. Sir Reed, one of them said carefully. Alexander didn't look at them first. He looked at Lily. Are you hurt? He asked. Lily blinked. No. Only then did he turn to the men. What is this? Silence. The first man hesitated. Internal recovery request, he said. Old corporate exposure files. We are just collecting unresolved material. Alexander's eyes sharpened. That file was closed. The man didn't answer. Because both of them knew it wasn't. Flashback, system-level foreshadowing. Years ago, after Daniel Carter's death, a chain of financial audits had been quietly sealed, not erased, but buried under legal protection structures involving multiple corporations. Alexander had unknowingly approved part of that ecosystem during a merger phase years earlier. At the time, it was business. Now, it was exposure. Back in the present, Alexander stepped forward slightly. You don't approach civilians for corporate cleanup. The man shifted slightly. This one is connected. Alexander's voice lowered. Not anymore. A long silence. The tension wasn't loud. The tension wasn't loud. But it was sharp. Controlled. Dangerous in its restraint. Finally, the men stepped back. Not defeated. But redirected. The SUV turned slowly and left the road. Not because they were done. But because they had chosen to pause. Lily stood frozen. She had not fully understood what just happened. But she understood one thing clearly. Her father's name had just been used like a key. She turned to Alexander slowly. Why do they know my father's name? She asked. A pause. Alexander didn't answer immediately. Because this was the moment he had been avoiding. Not out of fear. But consequence. Finally, he spoke. Because your father saw something most people never survive seeing. Lily's breath caught slightly. And you? She asked softly. Alexander looked at her. I'm trying to make sure you don't pay for it too. Silence again. Different this time. Heavier. Personal. Then Lily whispered something unexpected. Is this why things have been changing? My mother's treatment, the help, the approvals. Alexander didn't deny it. And that silence was the answer. Lily stepped back slightly. Not in fear. But in realization. So I wasn't alone. Alexander's voice softened slightly. No. You were just unseen. For a moment, neither spoke. The road around them returned to quiet. But not peace. Something had shifted permanently. And far away. Someone was now aware that Alexander Reed was no longer just observing the situation. He was involved. Which meant one thing. The system that buried Daniel Carter had just noticed Lily Carter. The night after the encounter felt different. Not safer. Just heavier. Lily sat beside her mother's bed, but this time her mind wasn't fully there. Grace was finally stable, breathing easier than she had in weeks, yet Lily kept glancing toward the window, like something outside had changed the rules of her life without asking permission. Grace noticed. You're distracted, she whispered. Lily forced a small smile. I'm fine, Mom. But Grace shook her head slowly. You've been saying that since you were a child. Silence fell between them. A familiar one, but now, it felt different. Because Lily knew something was happening. She just didn't know what. Outside the house, Alexander stood again in the distance. Not hiding this time. Just watching. But not her alone. The entire system around her life. His phone vibrated continuously, updates, confirmations, sealed files being reopened under his authority. And for the first time in years, Alexander Reed wasn't just reacting to corruption. He was confronting it. Daniel Carter, years ago, sitting in a dim office, placing a USB drive into a locked drawer. If anything happens to me, he had told a colleague, make sure my family is not erased with me. That colleague had vanished 2 weeks later. And the USB had never been found. Until now. Back in the present, Alexander closed his eyes briefly as his team confirmed it. We recovered partial data, the voice said through his earpiece. Enough to expose the entire chain. Alexander opened his eyes. Then it ends now. Inside the house, Lily suddenly heard a knock. Not urgent. Not aggressive. Controlled. She opened the door slowly. A man stood there holding a sealed envelope. Miss Carter, he said respectfully. This is for you. Lily hesitated. From who? The man lowered his head slightly. From Mr. Reed. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it. The man left immediately. No explanation. No delay. Just departure. She returned inside and opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a document. Then another. Then another. Bank records. Legal filings. Corporate transactions. Hidden transfers. Names she didn't recognize, and names she feared she might. And at the bottom, a photograph. Her father, Daniel Carter. Not dead in memory. Dead in proof. Silenced in system. Lily's breath shook. "No," she whispered. Grace noticed immediately. "What is it?" Lily couldn't speak at first. Then finally. "They didn't just lose Dad," she said quietly. "They removed him." Grace's face changed instantly. For the first time in years. Fear returned. Not for herself. But for the truth. Outside, Alexander finally stepped forward. This time, into the light. Because hiding was no longer necessary. The truth had already been uncovered. Now it needed to be delivered. The next morning, the city woke up to something it had not expected. A press release. Then another. Then breaking news across every major outlet. Corruption exposed. Illegal financial network uncovered. Executives under investigation. And at the center of it all, Daniel Carter's name. Restored. Lily stood in front of the small house, watching strangers gather as news vans filled the street. She didn't understand the scale of it yet. Not fully. But she understood one thing. The silence that killed her father had finally been broken. A black car stopped nearby. Alexander stepped out. No disguise. No shadow. Just presence. He walked toward Lily slowly. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a watcher. He felt like someone who had finally finished what someone else started. Lily looked at him. "You did all this because of me." Alexander shook his head slightly. "Because of what you never stopped being, even when life gave you every reason to change." A pause. Then he added quietly. "Your kindness wasn't small, Lily. It was the reason everything collapsed." She blinked slowly. "I don't understand." Alexander looked at her directly. "Because kindness like yours forces truth to surface." Behind them, Grace stepped outside for the first time in days. She looked at the crowd. At the lights. At the documents being verified. And then at her daughter. Tears filled her eyes. Not from pain. But recognition. Sophia and Ethan arrived later that day. But this time, they didn't speak first. They couldn't. Because everything they ignored was now public. And everything Lily carried alone was no longer hidden. Sophia and Ethan arrived later that day. But this time, they didn't speak first. They couldn't. Because everything they ignored was now public. And everything Lily carried alone was no longer hidden. Alexander stepped back slightly. Because this wasn't his ending. It was hers. He had only done one thing. He made sure the world finally saw her. And as Lily stood there, quiet, overwhelmed, still holding the envelope that changed everything, one truth became clear. She was never just surviving her story. She was the reason it was finally being rewritten.